was an academic in art history before I was a full-time photographer, and I remember him saying that to me about his writing. He was saying that at one point, I remember him saying that he looked back at his juvenilia and thought, "I was good back then. Like, I can't write like that anymore." So I don't know if it's you're just being too hard on yourself or if that's true. It could just be true. You peak and then I don't know.
Well,
But I
I mean,
definitely feel that way.
it's sometimes I think it's, when you look back, I mean, I look back at some stuff that I did, like, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, and I think like, wow, there was almost like a childlike, playfulness in some of it, which for one reason or another, I feel like maybe I don't know, maybe I gotten older. Well, I did get older, but maybe I got more, I don't know, more cynical, and I've just lost that sort of willingness to experiment sometimes, maybe, and that's how I
Yeah,
sort of look at it.
and I think also for me, and it's kinda related to that, just having youth means just you are so determined, and you work so hard when you're first starting out. Everything's on the line. It's so important to you. You have so much energy and you want it so bad. I think I worked I know I worked really, really hard and I still work hard, but maybe not as hard. Maybe that's it. I don't know.
But that's the thing. I mean, at least you've gained all the experience. That's the thing, and of course, you're now in a position where you can pass that on, which you do through your workshops.
I do. Yeah. And so, maybe I'm not s- you know, just I it is in landscape photography, very physically demanding, And so you can only for so long shoot every single sunrise and every single sunset and hike 8 hours a day up 3,000 feet of elevation gain. All that crazy stuff that I used to do. I'm not at that level of crazy anymore. And maybe that's what makes the difference. You got to be at a pretty high level of crazy. You
Yeah.
know?
Um. So, tell me a little bit about your workshops because you're running workshops fairly
Yeah,
regularly.
I'm on hiatus this year. Aside from no, that's next year. Got another Antarctica one coming up with Justin Black in January. But mostly I do adventure style workshops. So I will take people out into places where they're not going to see other photographers. And I find ways to get them there so that most people can do it. I used to do really crazy backpacking workshops that were pretty demanding, and I increasingly made them easier. Found ways to get people or at least convey their gear so they didn't have to hike with it and that sort of thing. But Dolomites, French Alps, I've done, Iceland, all over the Southwest, wherever Death Valley, tons of Death Valley. Um, so what they all tend to have in common is that they are wilderness areas that are either mountainous or desert for the most part, or some version of that where things are changing a lot. And you can go to a variety of places and not feel like you're being haunted by the ghosts of a thousand other photographers who've come before you, where you can be creative and where because things are changing so much, they're very dynamic. Like the Dolomites, for example. Okay, the peaks don't change that much, but the atmosphere, 100%, like, can just completely conceal and reveal whole mountains, and, I have photos that most people don't even know where I was standing or what that is, because the atmosphere is so thick, and that's what I love about that area. And then the desert, the literal ground changes, like areas with, like, mud tiles or whatever, for example, might be there one season and then gone the next, and, so I tend to really enjoy those areas where I can get people out there and we're all doing a little bit of like exploring, just to see how things have changed since even the last week.
Yeah. That's actually one of the things I love about the Lofoten Islands is that the environment is always changing and it's so radically different. There's snow there for about, I don't know, 9 months of the year, which is great. But then the 3 or 4 months where there's no snow, it turns into a completely different landscape because now nothing's covered in white. It's you got this Arctic tundra, mosses, these greens and browns, and ochre type colors, and that's offset against the blue sea and the black granite mountains, and it's like a different place. If you're there in October, which when I was there, it's so different from what it looks like in February when it's like full on
Yeah.
mega snowstorms and everything. Um, have you have you noticed changes in the environment, more general, like, let's say the impacts of, climate change or something like that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I used to do winter doll nights workshops every year. I used to do a lot of them. And anymore, I can't even peg when we might have snow. It's just so hard. And likewise, another thing, just to use Dolomites again, the wildflowers. It used to be so predictable. I knew roughly, like within a week or two, what varieties of wildflowers would be growing in a certain place. And I could pretty much count on, all right, they might be peaking next week or the week before, but at least I know they'll be here and I just need to find the patch that's still peaking, right? Um, and it got to the point where the landscape just seemed utterly confused, and all of the wildflowers were growing all in this compressed period all at once and then gone. It was, so I would come with one group and it was like, "Wow, I've never seen those varieties of flowers growing side by side. That's bizarre." Wonderful for that group, and then the next group has nothing, like no flowers. you know? So, that got weird. Yeah.
The interesting thing about this is that, it sort of comes full circle. So now your landscape photography actually turns into, I was like documentary photography since the environment keeps changing.
In a way, yeah, I mean, I remember, again, like glaciers, little glaciers that I used to be able to go to, and I knew there would be runoff from that, and now they're gone, in the mountains and French Alps too. Yeah, so and now I have photographs of these things that are never coming back. Um, so yeah, in a sense, there is that documentary side of things, which isn't really what turns me on and what motivates me. Because like I said, I feel like at best I'm creating a souvenir or some kind of redundancy, like, like I'm not trying to like just I capture nature. I who that you're not capturing nature. Okay, you're just not. Like nature is this wonderful thing that you just have to go and experience. You can't capture it.